Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. We've got some dramatic entitled parent stories for you today, but just before I jump into them, I want to mention or remind you that I have a giveaway going on this week, so make sure you stick around until later on in the video to see how you can enter. That being said, our first story of the day is written by Jack IR30, entitled Family Thinks They Own the Entire Beach. Hi guys, this isn't my story but a family friend of mine, and after she told me this story, I knew it belonged on here. I'm going to make this a two-parter since the first part is actually kinda long. Quick backstory. My family, who aren't involved in this story, and family friends, own beach houses in Little Bay area that eventually leads out to the ocean. There are several small piers within the boardwalk area where families can swim and jump off the piers. They have netting surrounding the pier to indicate how far families can swim. Beyond the netting, that's where boats, kayaks, etc. can run. Unfortunately, on these piers, there have been some entitled people believing they own some of these piers because their beach house is right there behind it. I will admit, our family has had our beach house for over a century, passed down through several generations. Even though we have to walk down the street to get to this pier, I think if anybody deserves that pier, it should be us. Anyways, onto the cast of our story. FF is family friend, N is family friend's neighbor, EM is witch, EK is spawn of witch, and D is neighbor's daughter. The first part of the story happened to family friend's neighbor, who eventually told family friend what happened. After swimming hours over at the pier, families like to go there to catch crabs. Only crabs that measure within a certain height can be kept. Because of the whole thing with social distancing, friend's neighbor and neighbor's daughter went to try and find a good spot away from other families so they could crab. They actually got a really good spot at the end of the pier away from everybody else, and they set up their things there. They were only planning on catching a few crabs and then heading out. It was only a few minutes into their crabbing when the 15 to 16-year-old entitled kid came marching right up on to neighbor and neighbor's daughter. The entitled kid says, "Hey, you're in my spot." Neighbor looked around, trying to find anything that shows the kid's spot was taken. Nets, cages, buckets, etc. There wasn't any. They were the only ones there. Everybody else was on the other side of the pier. Neighbor says, "I'm sorry, but there's nothing here to show that this is your spot." "You need to leave, now, this is my spot." "Kid, this is public property, nothing here is yours. We're only going to catch a few crabs and then leave. Please be patient." Entitled kid continued to whine to neighbor for a couple minutes before finally leaving. Neighbor couldn't believe how immature this kid was acting. Her daughter was only 10 and acting more mature than him. Not even a few minutes later, entitled kid came back, and who does he come with him? Entitled mother, who was a full-on Karen. The blonde, "Let me speak to your manager" hair. The sunglasses, long nails, etc. She went right on over to neighbor and did that throat clearing nobody likes. "Excuse me, I heard you two made fun of my son and won't let him have his spot back." "We never insulted him, and there was nothing here to show that this is his spot. We're only here to catch a few crabs and then we'll head out." "No, you need to leave his spot now." "Lady, we're not going anywhere." Entitled mother, pointing to a house. "You see that? That's our house right there. My son has claimed this spot on the pier as his own. You must obey that or I will tell the authorities." "There is nothing marked on this pier that states this spot is your son's. This pier and the entire beach and boardwalk is public property. I myself can call the authorities on you for disturbing us." It looked like neighbor had finally put entitled mother and entitled kid in a corner. Just then, neighbor's daughter, completely oblivious to the argument and focus on crabbing, pulls out a small crab from her net and shows it to neighbor. Before they could say anything though, entitled mother quickly butts in. "Give us that crab you just caught. It'll make up for all the trouble that we caused." "It's too small to be kept." "Who told you that?" "It's an actual law here." "There's nothing here to prove that." Neighbor pointed to a sign that was on a pole directly behind them explaining the rules of catching crabs. "If you own this pier like you claim you do, you would have known that." Entitled mother didn't say anything but tried to snatch the small crab out of neighbor daughter's net. Neighbor's daughter started shaking the net over the water hoping the crab would let go. Thankfully, before entitled mother got to her, the small crab let go and plopped back into the water. Entitled mother let out an ungodly howl at the sight, as if she just watched her precious entitled kid get attacked by a shark or something. Finally, she grabbed entitled kid and stormed away from them. Neighbor and neighbor's daughter didn't stay too long after that and didn't catch any crabs. They both just wanted to get the heck out of there after that. That's the end of part 1. Part 2 involves family friend and the entitled mother and her family being the reason a new law was created for the beach. So part 2 focuses on family friend. This section only focuses on the friend's neighbor. So all I want to ask is, if this was you in this situation, would you have gone ahead and called the authorities on this Karen? Let me know if you would have in the comments below. On to part 2, town makes new law because of entitled mother. So, family friend took her family down, her husband, mother, children, and grandchildren, down to the same pier as part 1 so that they could go swimming. Because family friend's mom was elderly, both family friend and her mom decided to stay under the pavilion in shade while watching everybody else swim. At first, everything was going good and it looked like everybody was having a good time. Then, cue entitled mother and her family of 20 plus people gathering inside the small pavilion, setting up food, table, and chairs directly behind family friend and her mother. They couldn't even move or get out because of how close they were and how crowded everything was. Family friend could tell this was the person neighbor mentioned before because of the way neighbor described her. Family friend still tried to be civil, and when she saw entitled mother, she tried to ask her nicely to move. "Hi, would you mind moving your party over a little bit? My mom and I barely have any space to move."
"Excuse me? We happen to live here so we can do what we want."
"This pavilion doesn't belong to anybody, it's public property."
"Whatever, we're still not going anywhere."
Family friend isn't a fan of arguing, so she and her mom just tried sucking it up and continued to watch their kids and grandkids play in the water. Unfortunately, that was short-lived as entitled mother's family started blasting music and yelling inside of the pavilion. Then, entitled kid came along in a jet ski. The entire family saw him and began cheering, screaming his name, etc. Entitled kid came extremely close to netting on the other side of the dock and began doing figure eights on his jet ski, splashing water on other swimmers nearby and creating huge waves. Depending on the time of day high tide and low tide are, the water at the other end of the dock could get very deep, and any young kid at that end could probably struggle swimming down there. Luckily, family friend told us that everybody at that end of the dock quickly got out when entitled kid started doing this, and her kids and grandkids weren't that deep in the water, so everyone was fine. After a few minutes, entitled kid finally left and everybody went back into the water, but entitled mother's family still hasn't calmed down. Finally, family friend and the other beachgoers saw the flashing lights of a police car pull up to the beach area. Everybody smiled as they knew entitled mother and her family were going to get in trouble. Entitled mother and her family saw the police car and attempted to ignore it, but suddenly grew quieter. The officer got out of the car and approached entitled mother. "Hello ma'am, may I have a word with you?" Entitled mother, all innocent like,
"What's wrong, officer?"
"I have been receiving numerous complaints throughout the past half hour in regards to your party causing a disturbance."
"What? We haven't been doing anything."
Family friend says, "Officer, they've been yelling and screaming the entire time they've been here, blasting music, and somebody from their family came by on a jet ski extremely close to the dock and started showing off."
"Mind your own darn business."
"How can I when I'm less than a foot away from you and you won't move?" "Alright, here's how this is going to work out." To entitled mother, "You can either move your family outside of the pavilion so that people can have room to sit, or you can leave the beach altogether."
"You can't do that, we have a beach house right over here."
"Then you can either move your party over there, or move your party outside of the pavilion."
"This is unacceptable, you can't do this to us. What is your name? I'll make sure to write a report about you."
Officer gives his name and badge number.
"Alright then, I will call your station and make sure you get fired."
"The station is well aware of everything going on right now, ma'am. And if you fail to comply, we will have you fined and removed from the premises, whether your house is right here or not." Entitled mother was having none of this. So instead of leaving like any other person would do, she grabbed a sandwich from one of the bags she brought and threw it right at the officer. The officer, without hesitation, grabbed her and cuffed her. The other members of her family were growing mad at the officer for arresting her, but they didn't fight back. "This is your last warning, ma'am. Either you take your party elsewhere or I will bring you back to the station. You're very lucky I'm not putting you in my police car right now." Entitled Mother finally cooperated and was released. She didn't go completely free, however, as her and all of the adults in her family were fined. She was fined the heaviest, though, for also assaulting the officer. The family grumpily grabbed their stuff and left. The officer didn't leave until he knew they were gone. A couple days later, some new rules were put in place that no partying of any kind would be allowed on the beach because of Entitled Mother. A patrol officer has also been sent to inspect the pier every once in a while each day to make sure that Entitled Mother and her family weren't doing this again. And so far, since family friend, her family, and my family have been down there, they haven't. But there's still extremely loud and blasting music on the beach and inside their house. Update: thanks for all the love in this story. I just thought I'd clear some things up real quick. Yes, the beach town I stay at mainly consists of white conservative people. There are a few people of color that either live or stay around here, but their beach houses are near other piers, so we hardly see them. And also, I've gotten some comments in regard to it actually being a law. I just had a conversation with family friend, and she told me that it wasn't necessarily a law like she had originally worded it. It was more like a new set of rules for the beach. Because of this, so I don't confuse or mislead anybody, I'll change the title of this part if I can. Imagine getting slapped with a heavier fine because you did assault with a deadly sandwich. I guess in a way it could be assault with a deadly sandwich if... Now this is definitely stretching, but let's say the police officer had a deathly peanut allergy, and the sandwich that Entitled Mother chucked was a PB&J. Then it could be assault with a deadly sandwich, right? Bad joke? Our next story is by Doge BTO69. Entitled Mother breaks my friend's phone trying to prove a false claim. Okay, so this literally happened 20 minutes ago at the time of writing. And this story unfortunately is about my own mother. Yes. Anyway, let's get on with the story. My friend came over to my house to give me a trigonometry textbook for school, decided to stay for longer to play R6 with me on his laptop that he brought. Maybe 20 minutes go by and we are in my room playing casual matches when my mom suddenly starts pounding at the door demanding to be let in. I lock my door when I play video games because my mom has a habit of grabbing my mic while I'm playing and asking strangers what math they are doing in school. She's a math teacher and is super obsessed with math, but that's a story for another time. This time she yells and says, "Where is my charger?" She starts banging the door so hard the door would probably break, so I get up and unlock it only to be yelled at even more. "Where is my iPhone charger?" I think it's important to note my friend and I don't use iPhones, we both use Android phones and have no need for iPhone lightning cables. I don't have it. I wouldn't take it, I have no use for an iPhone charger. "Well, yes you do, so give it back." Me, silence. "Then your friend has it." My friend says, "I use an Android too, I wouldn't take your iPhone charger." "Well, yes you do, so give it back." Both of us, silence. My friend says, "I have no use for your charger because my phone uses USB Type-C and you have a lightning port." "Well, it works for all phones, show me your phone and I'll prove it to you." Before my mom can even say anything, she grabs his phone and storms into her room. Us both are super confused and are trying to understand what logic she is using until she comes back into my room with her iPhone cable and his phone in hand. Yes, the cable she lost. "Well, explain this." Jams the iPhone cable into the Android phone. "Aha!" She throws it back to my friend and she once again demands for the cable back. I say, "Don't you have it in your hands?" "Well, you shouldn't be talking back like a smart butt." She storms off knowing she just made a fool of herself and we go on playing video games, trying to forget what just happened because it made no sense. He leaves maybe 5 minutes later and everything goes back to normal until they get a text. It reads, "Dude, your mom jammed the cable in and broke my charging port." If you don't know what he just said, basically an iPhone cable is thin and a USB-C cable is thick and has a little thing inside the port for you to charge, and my mom jammed it in so hard she broke the pin thing. Just search it up. I told my mom and she refuses to believe that was her fault, so yeah. I'll provide an update if anything changes, but that's what happened. If I was in the friend's shoes and my friend's mom, without my consent, took my phone, jammed an iPhone cord in there and broke the charging port, I would definitely be trying to pester her to either pay for repairs or a new phone. OP did say in the comments though that eventually she did end up replacing the phone, which is great. So now it's time for me to give you guys the info on the giveaway. If you guys want to be in with a chance to win $30 in Amazon gift cards, all you have to do is leave a comment based on something you saw in the video on any video this week. If you liked a story, if you thought something was funny, if you thought one of my jokes was terrible, but please try not to do that because my ego is fragile, I will be picking a winner from a random video on Sunday night after the last video of the week has gone out and announce it on Monday's video. So feel free to comment on every video from the week to better your chances of winning. Remember, it has to be based on something you saw in that video. And whilst you're at it, why not like the video because it helps more than you know. That said, our final story of the day is written by Jemmy74, entitled Dad Steals Motorboat, acts as his own attorney during the criminal trial, has fool for a client. There have been cases in this form that resulted in the entitled parent being arrested, and I thought there may be some interest as to what happens after the arrest. This happened many years ago when I was a deputy prosecutor handling misdemeanor cases. In this particular case, there was a street on a private beach with a series of houses in a remote area. There were other places that had public beach access, and this particular place was off the main road and not easily accessible. There was no reason to be there unless you were a resident of one of the houses or was visiting someone there. The entitled dad drove into the neighborhood and stole a boat motor from one of the properties. A neighbor watched him put the motor into his truck, got the license plate number, and called the police. A deputy responded and pulled him over a short time later. The deputy found the boat motor in the back of the truck and entitled dad admitted he took it. Entitled dad was cited for misdemeanor theft. He wasn't taken into custody but was given a notice to appear in court. This was typical for a non-violent property offense. I then got the case. So I was minding my own business, working in my office, when entitled dad called and demanded to speak to me. He then demanded that I dismiss the charge against him. He didn't really have a coherent reason as to why, since he pretty much had been caught red-handed. He mainly yelled and was obnoxious. Legal tip number 1. Yelling at the prosecutor will not result in criminal charges going away, but it will result in having to deal with a cranky prosecutor. When he couldn't bully me into dismissing the charge, he then demanded that another prosecutor be assigned to his case. This did not happen. Legal tip number 2. People charged with crimes don't get to choose the prosecutors on their cases. The case is set for trial, he pleads not guilty, and elects to represent himself. At trial, I call as witnesses the neighbor, the boat motor owner, and the arresting deputy. Entitled dad presents a beachcombing defense that if he is able to keep a pretty shell he finds at the beach, he ought to be able to keep a boat motor. It didn't make a lot of sense. It really got interesting when he called himself as his own witness. He questioned himself by having a conversation with himself. Here is an example of how some of the actual testimony went. Entitled dad shifts to the left side of the witness chair. Mr. Entitled Dad, do you have a motive to steal a boat? Entitled dad then shifts to the right side of the witness chair and looks at an empty space that he had just occupied. No, I don't have a motive to steal a boat. Entitled dad slides to the left. Mr. Entitled Dad, do you like seafood? Entitled dad slides right. No, I do not like seafood. My kids do not like seafood. My wife likes seafood, but that's not a motive to steal a boat. I looked over at the arresting deputy who was sitting next to me as my designated law enforcement representative. He was watching with a horrified expression, and I saw his lips silently form the words. Later, when we were outside, the deputy told me how freaky he thought it was. It took the jury 15 minutes to find him guilty. I don't remember specifically what he got as a sentence, but it was likely only fines and community service, since that was typical for that type of offense. I don't know about this guy, but it sounds like he needs some help. The whole shifting around multiple personality thing? Either he's a stand-up comedian realizing that he's too far gone in this case and is just going all balls to the wall with it, or this guy's got some deep-rooted issues, I think. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So what I want to say is thank you so much for watching and listening to the Storytime channel today. If you enjoyed the video today, please consider giving it a like, and if you haven't yet, please consider subscribing and turning notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video from the Storytime channel. Every single like and subscription is an important piece of our amazing channel. So no matter what you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, or simply viewing the videos, thank you all so very much for supporting the Storytime channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day.